in the engine room, we've got a little bit of something going on.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So what we've done is built a tent of doom in here. So we're protecting basically the engine right there. You can see there's a thing sticking through. That's a vacuum cleaner. What we're doing is taking this mount off with a grinder and plasma and so on. And we're taking this old registration number plate off. It's already had half of it been cut off, but we need to get the rest of it off. Well, there we go. Length overall, 17.37 meters. Did not know that. And you can sort of see on the bulkhead, we've got these little like lumps and bumps like that, sort of randomly spread around from old mounts and stuff that have been cut off over the years. You can sort of see some here, and that's all getting ground off because this front wall needs to get sanded and painted. And yeah, that's because we're doing something quite lovely up here, I think, and this all has to happen prior to the lovely thing happening. So Beck's the one that's getting stuck into the tent of doom. You can sort of see we've stolen all the lights. There's like basically no lights around the engine room now because they're all in the tent of doom. Plasma cutter grinder is ready to go.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Time to get into there.
Yeah, climb into the tent.
We've taken a sunken fishing trawler and converted her to a community-funded expedition and research boat crewed by volunteers from around the world.
Because life's too short not to fight for your dream. Welcome back to Project Brupeg. After sealing up the tarp tent with magnets, Burke and Dame get into the unpleasant job of plasma cutting and grinding the old brackets off the bulkhead. Clearing and painting this wall is one of the many jobs on Brupeg this week. We'll explain why a bit later.
Hey! Oh! Oh. Nothing's cool? Yep! Yep! It's that one and that one.
After a quick dismantling of the tent, it was Margaux's turn.
In the engine room, I want to show you where the noise is coming from. What are you up to down here?
Sanding the wall because we want to paint it, and because something special will going on it soon.
Beck's been working on the secret laser etch project that we have going on, something that's pretty special and very unique based on something that happened on Brupeg, shall we say? Maybe? We could probably say that? I think we'll say that. Leave it there. You can guess. What are you two guys working on?
No.
Nothing much. Just keep your little nose out.
Nothing to see here.
We just do that. With Duncan's arrival, Baby Cat was very curious about what was in this box.
What's that? This is the box if we're going to have all the cabling. This is a screen that actually just says what load is running on each inverter, and he was going to cut it into this and mount it into this. So all the cabling is behind the box.
Got it.
He's the quality inspector.
Yeah.
Okay, so well, basically they plug together.
Yeah.
And if I turn that on, it'd run right now.
Yeah.
The switch panel
Okay.
up on the switch room, or it could come on the cable coming out of each inverter.
Same is where I'm going. We've got 95mm square cable going now.
Okay. So That's it's called a split core current transformer, I'm going to call it. So the idea is that a tiny bit, for a wire that goes through that, a tiny bit of current will induce current. It's got a little transformer in there, so little transformer then produces current available on this clip here. Now, I've got to do a little bit of research because some of these clips have some circuitry inside, some don't. So I've got to figure out what's inside this one and then what I need to interface that to that. But the idea is with our two main feeds, we've got two of the current clips here, and so the inverter 1, inverter 2, for instance, and then that goes straight into that. I was really hoping I'd have enough characters to go Oompa Loompa 1 and Oompa Loompa 2, but I ran out of characters. So sorry, it's inverter 1 and inverter 2, unless we say Oompa 1 and Oompa 2.
OL1.
Yeah, we could. What it'll also do is talk to BruNet. And so it'll appear up on the dash, up on the bridge. You know, you were talking about yesterday at the Patreon meeting, you were talking about the two inverters not being in sync.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually a great opportunity. I'll set up the oscilloscope and we actually can display the two outputs and show that they're not in sync necessarily.
Yeah. Rikey. The sandpaper you're using...
Ah, that's the ceramic plate, isn't it?
The sandpaper you're using is probably not as good as the stuff that we can use. This is showing you how bright it is.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, that's great.
So what it's first trying to do is find the network up to BruNet.
It's already programmed.
Yeah. So it'll probably try that for a minute or two, and then eventually it's going to say, no network link, and then it'll come up and say it cannot connect to BruNet.
Yeah, that's lovely. It's not nowhere near as bright as that.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh, they took some reverse engineering to get that going.
Yes, that's great. That's
That's so cool.
beautiful.
No network link.
And eventually it'll come up with little how to fix it type thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So it'll go, reboot the OUT,
Oh, that's friggin' amazing.
and then it'll come back. I think it comes up inverter 1, inverter 2. But what I want to do is if it doesn't find the network, just bypass it and function by itself. That's one of the things I had in mind, is to try and keep this as fail safe as possible. So even if the rest of the system all went down,
it's just
you can monitor.
Awesome.
So if we had this plugged into a router, that would disappear. There we go. So DHCP failed. We know that. And then check connection to the OUTX11.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Actually, it might stop right there, and that's the bit I want to bypass. Saying, okay, that's fine, but it could still run standalone if need be. So I'll fix that.
All right. There's lots going on right now. Carlos down here is organising paint for up the very front. I'm organising polishing some stainless because we have to change our stove tops. Long story, the stove we've got isn't going to work with the inverters we've got, so we've swapped over to two separate induction hobs. So I've got to fit that. So that's my job this morning, is get that done. Burke and Jess, they're working on secret agent project up the top. That's happening. Margaux is currently fitting some insulation, finishing off painting of the last couple of cabinets, and then she's sanding the engine room wall for secret agent project number 2. So get that underway. But Duncan is on board today, so he is currently in the wheelhouse doing monitoring and so on for the inverters. He's built some inverter load monitoring for that. And then we're going to start working on some software development, as well as integrating some of the wind instruments, AIS and transducer into the navigation software. What I need to do in the galley, right now we've got a 4-burner sunk into the bench, and there's a square hole cut out to allow that to sink in. It's a long story, but we can't use that. We need to change to 2 separate 2-burners. We're moving to induction as well at the same time, we may as well. But by having the 2 separate appliances, it allows us to split them across the 2 inverters. Because they don't phase sync, we need them to be completely independent, and that's part of the problem with running the 4-burner as one larger unit. So to do that, I actually need to weld a piece of solid, like chunky, stiff, solid stainless into the middle. So I'm using a bit of right angle stainless. This is just mill finish, it's not shiny or anything like that, but I need this to be shiny like the rest of the bench so it doesn't look funny. So my job this morning is to polish a bit of old, right angle stainless, get that to an awesome mirror finish. So I'll probably cut this with my grinder, and then peel that off, and then cut that with my skill saw, the timber underneath with the skill saw.
Okay. So I'm really curious to see how you're going to weld across there.
Oh, that just comes down to the skill of the welder.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So I'll get back to do it.
Yeah.
So first part to getting this nice and lovely is using a flapper wheel. This is a new flapper wheel, or relatively new. It's only ever been used on stainless. You don't want to use a flapper that's been used on mild steel because it'll embed bits of mild steel in there, which will end up being embedded into this part. So new flapper wheel, and let's just skim this off, and then we're going to start working down through some other wheels I'll show you in a sec. So the next step is changing the wheel. I use these poly flap discs, so they're a bit like a 3M Scotch pad. They're quite fine. This one's actually the fine one, so I'll start off on a medium and then I'll move to fine. I'm showing you this one because the label on the medium one's disappeared. But we start with the medium and we dig it down, and that gets rid of a lot of the scratches that would have occurred as part of that flapper wheel. So the flapper wheel is not really a great finish. It's much better than the mill finish, but it's not as good as what you're going to get with this. This will give it a mirror finish eventually. You'll see quite a difference when you move to the different wheel. You can see here, these scratches are all from the flapper wheel. So even though it looks relatively tidy up here, they are quite deep scratches. When you start moving into the finer wheels, you'll start to see those scratches. So you want to try and go opposite to the scratches. So the scratches on the flapper wheel are going this way. So I want to try and put the scratches from this one, which will create them. I want to try and make them lengthways because it makes it easier to cut these scratches off. That's what you're left with using the medium finish. After a while, you can still see there's some marks in there. If this was something that I was trying to get to like a mirror finish or a show finish, I'd keep going, but I actually need to get this to a brushed finish to match the kitchen. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to move down to the next wheel, which is the fine wheel, and just clean up some of that surface a little bit more. So this is your medium finish, this is your fine finish, and this is just the mill finish that you get, which is, you know, perfectly acceptable for most jobs, but not for like a piece where you want it to look quite lovely. Because this is a cooktop area, we want it to be really easy to clean, and that's why I'm trying to polish it down as much as possible. But it gives you an idea. It didn't take long to actually get it down to that. Even though the medium finish is still quite a nice finish, this just takes it to that next level. Now you can see over the back here, you've got a little bit of speckling, which is just the final low spots of that mill finish from, you know, not sanding it down enough with the flapper. But if I keep going with the flapper, I'm going to end up with deeper and deeper grooves. Now, if you want this to be mirror finished, you'd go through a slightly different process in that you wouldn't necessarily use such an aggressive flapper wheel. But I know that we were going to be doing a brushed finish on this, so that's enough. So what we can do now is start sanding it lengthways and keep the scratches all in the same direction, and you'll end up with the brush finish. That's all the brush finish is basically one grit sanded in one direction, so you end up with a really beautiful finish. So that's a good base to start from to do that. There you go, pretty blooming shiny. I think that'll do. Shiny side, mill side. I need to weld that in there. Obviously I can't weld it in there because there's timber and so on everywhere at the minute, but I have to create, instead of having one single square big hole, I need to create two smaller rectangle holes. This is one of two induction cooktops that we're putting on. If I roll that over, you can sort of see you've got this like big bulbous bit sticking out the bottom, and it fastens around this edge here, just actually glues down around this edge here. But I have to, the distance between this area here and this area here is a bit longer than what I've got as a cutout in here, so I actually have to nip about 20 mil out of this edge here. So that's kind of a good thing. It'll take away some of these scratches, but it also brings the cooker slightly further out from the wall, which makes it a wee bit easier to use. I'm going to have a go with my saber saw. I don't know how successful this is going to be on stainless, because stainless is pretty tough to cut with saws generally, but if I can get this to work, it means that I end up with little small chunks of stainless around the boat that are vacuumable as opposed to dust throughout the whole boat, and that's the sort of thing that makes people swear at you. Yep.
You guys hit the wood as well?
Yep.
Hey, it's awesome.
Do the whole lot in one go.
Okay. Good idea.
Is it real dusty? You don't want to use a vacuum? Have somebody sit here while you're fucking...
Yeah, maybe I should do that.
Or maybe we can get a vacuum and you can like
tape it onto it. You know what? We probably can do that.
Onto the sand, get the
Let's do that. Yeah, let's do that.
Nice.
Right, see if it works.
Alright, proof of concept of the dust chopper Succomatic 3000 worked quite well. It is cutting, but what I need to do is shorten this blade up, because when I come around here, this piece of timber right here is in the way. So if we zoom down the bottom here, I don't want to cut this because it's the side of this cabinet here. So what I'm planning to do, if I can shorten it so that it's less than the depth of that bench, I can just safely cut across the top of that and then swap it out to a bigger blade when I get to here. There's nothing in the way between here and here. It's only on this one little corner here that there's an issue. Introducing Stubby Saw, available in family size also.
Battery.
You can see here Dame's put some tape on the foot. This is in the hopes that there'll be less scratching on the stainless as he moves along the line.
I have 2 bars of reception.
Dame's relieving the wood away from the steel in the hopes that he can make a weld hole so he doesn't burn through the wood when he starts to weld the stainless, and to give the right angle a little bit of space.
Things have escalated since we last spoke. So I think I've got it just about ready to go. I've hacked this out, a little bit of an L, which gives me some clearance for this when I put it in there. So plenty of room like that, so when I TIG it, it's not super close, because I've got to TIG this here and I don't want to burn the wood. But I am TIGging it pretty low amperage, but you never know. Over here, same deal. Done a bit of a whoopsie over here, and I've also scalloped this out to allow the cooktop to fit in here, because it was a wee bit tight, so I just nudged that out a bit more. This is ready to go, cut to size. That's where it gets TIGged in, and then the 2 cooktops basically just slide down either side of it. So Jodomastic 90, that's going to be that lovely dewy stuff. That's going to be put everywhere where there's bare steel on this bulkhead.
Welding bit by bit, slowly, and alternating between sites where he's welding. It just keeps the stainless a little bit cooler and easier to work.
Got the smallest tungsten I can get on there. I want to take as many amps out of the system as possible. And there we have it. After a bit of a polish up, that beam's in. So you can still see that there's clearly a weld in that join, and the fact that it's not disappeared completely means I just haven't polished it enough. But that beam is practically going to disappear underneath these 2 cooktops, so that's okay. So long as it's flush, so long as it's mostly polished, it's good enough. Let's get these cooktops mounted in. I'll feed that one.
I'll just get a torch. I can just keep my oven down.
Yep. So cable through the wall. Going to say please fit. sweet fit. They look great. I'm really chuffed with those. So they're not glued in, they're not like adhesive in around the edges, and we also don't have that wood epoxied. That's all got to happen tomorrow. At the top, Duncan, what are you working on?
So I'm just doing some harnesses to measure the current from the two inverters. We got two inverters in the boat. You might have heard of them being referred to Oompa Loompas. They're dumb inverters. So what we need to do really is to measure the AC current coming out of each of the inverters. So the idea is that non-invasively, with safety in mind, we're going to use these current clips. They're little transformers. They clip over the active line in our case. From each of the inverters, two clips. There's a little bit of interface circuitry here, and I'll heat shrink that so it's all protected and then disappears. And the idea is that then feeds into a little, it's a Raspberry Pi Pico based board, but this particular one's got an Ethernet adapter there, and so it will be displaying the two inverter currents on this little tiny LCD screen just for local access. But also we'll be feeding it up to the central data systems on Brupeg. So we'll be able to put it up on the dash or any web interface. We can then interrogate and have a look at what the instantaneous power situation is.
Wow. Up the front, Jess is building some food. So what's going on?
Curry for lunch and cake for dinner. We've got Julie and Duncan for dinner tonight, and Carlos has organised some stuff for that. But I'm doing lunch and I'm doing the dessert. So chocolate cake.
I am getting ready the etch for the anchor room finally from the holes that you drilled. So we're doing the mix part that I'm glad I finally made sure that I'm doing correctly. The 3.5 to 1.
It's terrifying once you paint something.
Oh man, yeah, I really thought I messed it up. I was really concerned.
Mixed, right?
As soon as you said something, I was like, oh my god, I put everything down. But yeah, no, I got it. So it's a 1 to 3.5 on this one for the etch. So I'm going to do the etch on the anchor room, and then the spots, and then finish the anchor room, and then start doing the sides with the fancy harness and everything that you've made for me.
We're going to start working on the hot water cupboard that sits downstairs. We need to get the hot water cylinder that we've got downstairs, the big stainless cylinder. We need to get that mounted in the boat before we leave. We don't have to hook it up. We just have to get it in the boat so we can launch the boat, so mounted and so on. Part of that entails putting the insulation on the hull under the waterline. So there's a very specific way we have to do that. You can't insulate a steel boat below the waterline without taking account of condensation. We know how to do it because this boat had a freezer room in the downstairs cabin area that used to be a freezer room. So we're basically going to copy what they did 50 years ago. Worked absolutely perfect for the last 50 years. So we allow a gap between the hull and the insulation of about 1 inch, and then we insulate from that inch outwards. It sounds a bit weird, but it'll make a lot more sense when we do it, and it allows the boat to breathe, but it also allows you to still have insulation in that underwater area. So we've got to do that before we can mount the stainless cylinder, so we'll get Margaux to do that part of it as well. So while that's all happening, I need to take this, which is our Sea Talk digital compass. I need to mount this on our radar mast. So being a steel boat, this doesn't like looking through steel, so I need to mount this as high as I can, as far away from metal and things as possible. You can calibrate it, but the further away you are from metal, the better. If it's a fiberglass boat, you actually mount this at the bottom of the mast, because this can see through fiberglass, but obviously steel doesn't quite work that way. I've got this male-female 90, and I've got this cable gland here which work really well. That's nice and tight, so I'm going to weld this facing down, and then I'm going to have a drip loop that comes out of here and goes up and back up, so it's hard for water to get up. Therefore we'll do the cable facing in that direction, so I've got to weld that to the mast, and that's how the cable goes in and out of the mast.
This week Carlos continues painting. This time he's etching anything that's gone down to bare steel from the needle gunning or the sanding.
And there you have it. Nice little bend. It's going to sit like that. By the time you fill that up with weld and then do a nice grind over that and just clean everything up, it looks absolutely smashing. The back's nice and tidy. It's a nice straight bend because you've got a straight cut. Yeah, lovely. Easy way of doing it if you don't have a bender. Beck's going to weld that mount together now. He's in the engine room all set up, so it's a beautiful TIG environment because it's just no wind whatsoever. So he's going to go down there and get those welded together. Once that's done, then I'm going to go up onto the wheelhouse roof and start tigging it into the radar mast so we can start feeding the cable down for Duncan, who's in the wheelhouse doing all of the electrics. While that's happening, Margaux over the back here, she's going to be organising some fairing compound. We've got to do some fairing on a piece of the bulkhead in front of the engine because we have to paint that and we need some stuff stuck onto that. So long story, we need to fair it, so we'll get into that. So fairing compound that we're using is a Wattle C Pro fairing compound. It's a 2-pack epoxy.
It's enough?
I'd probably double that.
This one smells bad.
Yeah, it's normal. Yeah,
Is that the one?
that's actually normal. But you know, I do agree with you. All right, now we're gonna mix the crap out of it. All right. Yeah.
But I will have to do it for like 1 hour.
Yeah. And you want to find like areas like that or like this,
Yes.
that sort of thing. And you want to just keep working it in.
Yeah.
You don't want to try and make it smooth and fair at this point. You're going to sand it afterwards, which will get it beautiful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Like this one, for example, it's not minus, but it's more like here.
Yeah. So
Do I
just
do something?
smear it over and we'll just sand it down so that it's smoother.
Okay.
Margaux will be doing the installation here in the living room today. So basically what we got here, she is doing on this side. Each panel's a little different. She has her method though, already measured out. She's outside cutting it. So she'll be starting possibly on that today. And she is out here somewhere. Alright, I am sanding here in the engine room. We laid in, I'd already got to some of it. This, I believe it's an epoxy of some sort. I don't know, it's very hard. We have to do a little bit extra, but we're gonna sand these like I did this one already.
That's all of them. It's all the wall here. And so what I've done, like to not lost any polystyrene, most of them I've done it in 2.
Ah, nice. That's nice.
So like this, we can see downstairs, most of the polystyrene is used.
Beautiful.
Do you miss me at all? Do you think about the things we used to do? No, you couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air.
You're doing great! Don't stop now!
Inexplicable, I can feel it in the air. Can you feel me?
Do you need to write Margaux was here?
Oh yeah, you can.
Margaux was here or something? Nice. It's clean, isn't it?
So it's beautiful.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
It is, it's gorgeous, look at that. Just do the other 2 up and leave that middle one. Look how lovely that is.
You couldn't stand tall. So why didn't you call? So many years has gone by, but I think about you all the time. Looks like you're changing and all, but why didn't you call? Something in the air, always something in the air.
We've been working on a secret project to show our appreciation to everybody during our GoFundMe, using a donated Auto LM3 laser engraver that we were given by a sponsor. Thanks, Cenas. It took over 80 hours to print and a lot of prep. Stay tuned to see the results. Time for a spruce up. It's been more than 8 minutes since we left this engine room alone, and it's got covered in crap. So as you know, about a year ago we had some pretty catastrophic issues with our main engine, and our patrons and our viewers and supporters urged us to go and run a GoFundMe to get Brupeg her legs again, and we ended up with this absolutely beautiful 855 built by Carl down in Brisbane. One of the stories that came out of the GoFundMe, out of the thousands of stories that we saw from all of the comments and the support and everything, it was amazing to be able to see such a flow of support for the project come from the community. It was absolutely breathtaking. But one of the stories that stood out was the story of Ryan McConnell and his father Billy. Billy was a seaman. He'd been on the sea for years and it was in his bones, and he passed away during COVID. But one of the things that Ryan told us about was Billy really got into watching Brupeg, and he said it was just one of those projects that he absolutely loved. And we really wanted to do something because that kind of captures the heart of Brupeg, like being with people that you love, doing things that are in your bones, being on the sea and having some pretty awesome times. We've dedicated Brupeg's beautiful new 855 to the memory of Billy McConnell, immortalised in stainless steel just as he would have loved it. There's a couple of other people we also want to thank as well. This is a wall of every single person that donated to our GoFundMe or has been a Patreon from day zero. This is close to 1,500 people that have been absolutely critical to the success of Brupeg.